going to contrast that to a team that are kind of in a similar position, really looking up the table rather than down. And that's Brentford, who beat Chelsea convincingly, really 2-0. And I know Chelsea had
Mm.
their moments in this game, but Brentford were adapting to the way that Chelsea played brilliantly, weren't they? I think the way they kind of countered everything that Chelsea threw at them with such ease and such calmness. I think Thomas Frank said the way that Brentford stayed calm against all that pressure and just, attacked with confidence was really good to see, actually, for a team like Brentford who have struggled of late. They've now put two
Mm.
wins back to back in the league, which is, the momentum I think they needed to kind of get back on track. The fact they're still 10th in the league, despite having that rocky period, says a lot about how good they are as a team, really. So,
Mm.
how realistic are Brentford's chances of Europe, and what did you make of them in this game tactically as well?
Oh, what a negative note to start a positive conversation on Brentford on. But I can't see them getting into Europe this year, if we're totally honest. I think there are two. It's the competition at the top end of the league is so high right now. I think we're seeing a massive divide all of a sudden. And last season, it felt like the whole league was far more competitive, except for Man City and Arsenal, who kind of ran away with it after a while. But it felt like the rest of them were all quite close together. And whereas this season, it feels like there is a very clear top 10 and bottom 10, if we're honest.
Yeah, true.
Where Chelsea fall into that, I'm not sure yet. We'll find out as the season goes on. But yeah, this is a great win for Brentford. And actually, I don't think it would be a shame for them to even be looking at mid-table now, because I think a lot of people, myself included, expected them to struggle a lot this season. They obviously lost Toney for an extended period of time, and it's likely that he might move on in January when he is back. And it's really hard for them to strengthen that squad massively. They lost David Raya as well, and we know how influential he was to the way that they played. But them getting this result against Chelsea doesn't feel like a fluke. It doesn't feel like
No.
a low-level team that are kind of getting a big scalp anymore. This feels like, yeah, this is about par for the course, because that's how good Brentford are against teams like this. We've seen them do it to Man United. Sorry to bring it back up. And they'll do it to Chelsea consistently as well, because they are more coherent. Again, they've got a really clear way of playing. Thomas Frank has got them moving very well. And they've adapted massively, because in the absence of Toney, they've brought this new partnership forward of Visser and Mbeumo.
Yeah.
And it's proven to be really fruitful for them, isn't it? They look really sharp together. And they might not be the most prolific goal scorers or the most technically gifted footballers, but the tactical approach that they take and the work ethic they put in is huge for Brentford. So, yeah, an amazing win for them.
Well, you mentioned the forwards, but I think that as a spine of a team, they've got a really strong look now. Obviously, they've got Flecken in goal,
Mm.
who seems stylistically like a good replacement for Raya, but
Yeah.
Maya and Pinnock at the back, who I think look really solid too. Pinnock
Yeah, Pinnock's
popping
amazing,
up
isn't
for a
he?
goal when he's got no right to be there at that stage of the game. Um,
Fantastic for
the
him.
midfield as well, though, they kind of controlled the transitions so calmly, and I think that was the calmness that Frank talked about. Was the likes of Jensen, who's been great for a few seasons now, Janelt, Norgard, all
Mm.
controlled the midfield quite easily against the Chelsea midfield that, on paper, was a much, much better midfield, but they didn't let them
Wow.
play. And that enabled Wissa and Mbeumo as well to just run and find space. And they were found quite often, weren't they? And that gives them, I think, confidence to know that they can get through to January in a good, healthy shape for when Tony does return. And that's why I say, can they
Mm.
make a push for Europe? Because when Tony does come back, it's another dimension for them again. It's something else for teams to
It's
think
true.
about. And you get used to Brentford playing now. The next time they play them in the second half of the season, it's going to be a different proposition altogether.
Yeah, that's very true. And it will be interesting to see whether, if he does stay, obviously you're right, that gives them a new dimension. But even if he moves on, it'll be big money. And Brentford haven't really had a history of being able to spend big money. So it'd be interesting to see how Frank would reinvest that into this squad. And I think actually, I wonder if where they're at right now, quietly, would it be a good thing if Brentford sold Ivan Toney? Because
Maybe.
actually, what they could do with that to build a whole squad rather than just have this one player. They're 10th now without him, and were they 10th last season with him, or ninth last season with him? So realistically, if you can get that money in and invest it well, then that might be a more stable thing long term for them.